Outrage in India. A court in Pakistan releases the man accused of planning the 2008 Mumbai attacks. India says its neighbour is sheltering terrorists. Is this a new setback in the already strained ties between the two nations? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Fuliba Thibault. Zaki-ur-Rehman Lakhvi, the man accused of planning a three-day siege in Mumbai in 2008, has been freed. He was released after his lawyer successfully argued that there wasn't enough evidence to convict him. Lakhvi still faces terrorism charges over the Mumbai attacks, which killed 166 people, but the trial has not yet started. The decision to let him go has been condemned by India and the United States. Here's what the Indian Interior Minister had to say.
We
are very disappointed by what Pakistan has done with Lakhvi. India wants to improve its relation with Pakistan as it is our neighbor and friendly relations should be maintained. But recent development in Lakhvi's case from Pakistan is very unfortunate.
Well, let's take a closer look now at who Zaki-ur-Rehman Lakhvi is, as well as the armed group Lakhvi, which was founded by Hafiz Muhammad Saeed in the late 1980s. There's currently a $10 million reward for information leading to his arrest. The group has been officially banned since 2002, but operates through its charity wing, Jamaat-ud-Dawa, to collect funds. Zaki-ur-Rehman Lakhvi is believed to be the group's operations chief, and they're accused of carrying out the 2008 attacks in Mumbai, but has never claimed responsibility. Now, let's bring in our guests in New Delhi, C. Uday Bashkar, Director of the Society for Policy Studies. In Islamabad, Zubair Iqbal Guri, Pakistan security analyst and author of The Media Terrorism Symbiosis, a case study of the Mumbai attacks. And in London, we have Adnan Nasimullah, lecturer in the Department of War Studies at India Institute at King's College, London. Gentlemen, welcome to you all. Thanks for being on Inside Story. Zubair, in Islamabad, if I may start with you, India says the court decision has only reinforced the perception that Pakistan has a dual policy in dealing with so-called terrorists, that those who've carried out attacks or are a threat to India are dealt with differently. What do you respond to this? And, you know, what influenced the court's decision to free this man?
Well, first of all, just keep the things right in a true perspective. He has not been freed. He has been granted bail. In December, one of the Pakistani courts granted him bail. And later on, the government of Pakistan put him under the detention according to some of the local laws. And now the High Court has decided that putting him under this detention was illegal. So the earlier decision of giving him bail was upheld. So
he is free. Just to clarify, he still faces charges, but he is on a bail.
He is on a bail.
Yes.
Yeah, he is on a bail, but charges are still standing, and this matter is sub judice in the court. And we all, just like any law-abiding citizens of Pakistan, and expect that the people across the world should also be law-abiding, and they're thinking that the independence of judiciary should not be questioned. So this is a matter that is clearly sub judice. He has not been freed from these charges. He is only on bail. And this should not create such hue and cry, such mess out of the proportion. He is still under those charges, and he has to prove that. And as far as the Indians are concerned and the Indian response is coming, I think that this is unwarranted and preposterous. There should not be that much thing, because the actions that the government of Pakistan have been taking, and again requesting the government of Pakistan from the government of India to provide cogent, tangible and provable evidence that can stand the strong arguments in a court of law. But unfortunately, as the Foreign Office spokesperson has said, just stated, Ms. Tasneem Aslam, she said that these evidences have been slow, that are not coming, they are incomplete. And since these are incomplete evidences, so they cannot stand the trial court. So if things are really in the hands of the Indians, if they could provide that much evidence, then definitely this is going to happen, that the justice will prevail and his court proceedings will go on.
Okay, let's bring in Ms. Bashkar in New Delhi. our guest in Islamabad makes an interesting point there in saying that the Pakistanis have said that all the evidence collected for this case was collected by India and has been in Indian hands, that India did not provide the Pakistani prosecution with access to some of the suspects, for instance. And, you know, that there was a slow process, that India didn't fully cooperate with Pakistan in this case. What do you respond to that?
I'm afraid this is not quite factual, because as far as the Mumbai attack is concerned in November of 2008, the Indian government at that time had compiled a fairly detailed kind of a dossier which had a lot of evidence of different types. And this was handed over to Pakistan at that time. And as far as the public record is concerned, the Indian Home Minister at that time, what would also be described as the Interior Minister, Mr. Chidambaram, had made a public statement that there was a fair amount of fairly credible evidence that would stand scrutiny in any court, whether in India or outside. And Mr. Chidambaram is a highly respected lawyer in India. So to that extent, I think the suggestion that India had not provided credible evidence, I'm afraid, is counterfactual. Now, there's an extended point here, which is that given the enormity of Mumbai, November 2008, where the victims, again, were not just Indians, there were many nationalities, innocent people who were killed in that attack. These included Europeans, United States of America, from Japan, from Australia, and different parts of the world. So this was a very major terrorist attack, and it poses a challenge, I would say, to the entire global community.
Okay.
But I'm afraid, and I say this as a security analyst, that the approach of the Pakistani government and the intelligence agencies, security agencies, apropos terrorism, has been far from convincing.
Okay.
Now, whether you look at the Daniel Pearl case,
sure,
you look at the assassination of the Punjab governor, or you look at Mumbai, I think the Pakistani establishment really is following what might be described as a selective approach, as you pointed out in your opening remarks.
Before we allow Zubair Iqbal to respond
issue
to that, I just do want to bring up an interesting point you made, and that is that 6 years ago, the then Interior Minister of Pakistan, Rehman Malik, provided some very graphic details of how part of the Mumbai attacks were actually hatched in Pakistan. And India's disappointment comes from its belief that Pakistan is somewhat backtracking on its efforts to jail those who were behind the 2008 attacks. So here's what Pakistan was saying about this issue 6 years ago.
Some part of the conspiracy has taken place in Pakistan, and all those, according to the available information, most of them, they are in our custody.
Zubair Iqbal in Islamabad. So what happened? I mean, Rehman Malik was saying there 6 years ago that they had enough evidence, and, that this case was a solid one, and yet here we are today where they're saying that there isn't enough evidence and that this gentleman must be freed on bail.
As you are saying that there was a solid case, Rehman Malik never said that it was a solid case. He just said that, as I could understand from whatever you have played just now, that some part of the conspiracy, as he understood, was hatched in some parts of Pakistan. Okay, fine. If we take this point in granted, how does it mean that it is Mr. Zaki-ur-Rehman Lakhvi indicates to be indicted into the case? My point is that, okay, if you are having some suspect, so according to all norms of judiciary, of fair play and justice, every person has a chance to be defended, and he or she cannot be found guilty, and she should be treated as innocent until proven guilty. So the problem here is, if you are saying that the Indians were involved, or the rest of the world, or the Americans, or the British, or the Spanish people were killed, okay, we agreed that we have been facing this menace of terrorism, but it does not mean, I repeat, it does not mean that you name somebody and hang that person. There has to be a process of law. There has to be a process of the judicial investigation. If if the courts thinks that the evidence is not good enough, and again, we should not blame here the government of Pakistan. We have an independent judiciary. The government of Pakistan is prosecuting the case on the basis of the evidence provided by the Indian government. And I'm quoting Tasneem Aslam, who is the spokesperson of the Pakistani Foreign Ministry, when she says that this is incomplete evidence that cannot stand the investigation in the court of law. So the government of Pakistan may not be implicated into it, not the intelligence agencies. This is a far a displaced statement, and I have an exception to this. And this is, by the way, you are aspersing doubts on the Pakistani judiciary, and that is not acceptable.
I am not. I mean, the guest in India was, I believe. But let's just bring in...
I'm not saying I'm the guest. I'm the guest.
Okay. Well, let's just bring in our third guest now, Adnan Nasimullah in London. Adnan, you know, why do you think this case, I mean, there is still a case against Lakhvi, but why do you think it is somewhat falling apart now?
Well, there are two or three different dynamics that are going on here. Firstly, Pakistan is in the process of shifting its judicial infrastructure to deal with terrorism, especially in relation to the recent 20th Amendment, which allowed for military courts. Now, this has just been occurring right in the last few weeks and months. I think that over the last few years, we have seen that Pakistan and the Pakistani judiciary, and especially the lower courts, have been rather ineffectual at dealing with kind of terrorism cases, and especially when you have ones that are that involved with the intelligence community. There's problems with information sharing, intelligence sharing between different aspects of the government, and especially between the government and the judiciary.
When you say, sorry, when you say, just to clarify, when you say that the cases, when you talk about cases involving the intelligence community, do you then believe, as some people, that the Pakistani military or the security apparatus or the intelligence services somewhat influence the court's decision to free this man on bail?
Let us just remember that this is freedom on bail. So one of the things that we have seen is that the government has actually been quite proactive in keeping detention going from December 2014 onward. So I agree with your guest from Islamabad that we do have a judiciary that is somewhat independent and is also responding to its own interests and prerogatives at this point. Part of the concern, actually, for a lot of judges is sort of a fear of retaliation from terrorist organizations. And we saw this quite a bit with the prosecution of Qadri, the assassin of Salman Taseer. But I do want to bring in the sort of broader context, especially in relation to Pakistani and Indian domestic politics. Narendra Modi just lost, not him, but his party, lost a really consequential election in the state of Delhi a few weeks ago. And so he's going to be very interested in pushing forward a sort of a national security agenda, and especially coming forward to elections in the state of Bihar in November. What we see in Pakistan is the Nawaz Sharif government, which has been crippled in the past by the agitations of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Islam under Imran Khan, is also dependent on political support from northern Punjab, which is the area in which Jamaat-ud-Dawa has a lot of support. So in some senses, we see domestic politics in both countries are kind of creating this issue and creating this issue into being more important than what normally is a bail proceeding.
I do want to look at the relationship, the broader relationship between India and Pakistan in just a moment. But just coming back to this case, let's bring in our guest from New Delhi once again, Uday Bashkar. I know you wanted to respond at one point to what our guest in Islamabad was saying, but just coming back to the point of whether this is, you think, a political issue rather than one of justice and counterterrorism. What is your thought on this?
Well, I'd like to first, I think, make this assertion that I have the highest respect for the judiciary of Pakistan. If anything, as an analyst, I'm bemoaning the fact that they have not been particularly effective for a variety of reasons whenever it comes to any kind of terrorism-related cases, even
And why do you think they haven't been effective? What are those reasons? Just give us one reason why you think they haven't been effective.
The reason I'm saying is that because of the politico-military nature of the Lashkar-e-Taiba as a group, you refer to Hafiz Saeed, the fact that the leader of the group is out, though he has a $10 million bounty on him. And my point is, the judiciary in Pakistan is shaped, influenced by this larger politico-military context. It is applicable in the case of Benazir Bhutto, Daniel Pearl, Lashkar-e-Taiba, and now Lakhvi. And therefore, one is only bemoaning what is happening over there. And my point, again, if I may add, Ms. Foley, is that given the enormity of Mumbai, to suggest that Lakhvi cannot even be kept under detention, it's nobody's case. Everyone is innocent till proved guilty. But there is a penal code, there are certain provisions. And to make this case that Lakhvi cannot even be kept under detention is very intriguing. And the last point, this reference to Mr. Modi, the Prime Minister of India, and the fact that his party lost an election in Delhi is frankly of no relevance as far as the current Lakhvi release or the 26th November case is concerned, because the governments of India from November 2008 till now have been consistent in expecting that Pakistan will actually go through the processes of investigating and taking this case to the court, knowing fully well that there is a selective approach when it comes to terrorism against India.
Do you agree with that, Zubair? And also on the point that, that he made about the judiciary in Pakistan being influenced by the military and the ISI?
No, of course not. Of course not. I have strong exception against that. Well, for that matter, calling any country's judiciary to be influenced by the outside actors should not be taken very, very lightly. So I have all the due respect for such a senior person who is sitting in New Delhi, and I'm particularly surprised by the comments that are coming from such a senior person who is heading an organization at such a security level. You cannot cast doubts against the judiciary, then the whole system must collapse. I may also ask, what about the investigation that has happened into the Godhra incident, what happened in Gujarat, what happened to the Samjhauta Express, when your own investigation agencies have pointed out that these were the in-house things. But I am not causing any type of doubts on that. My point is that if the government of Pakistan is responsible, if the intelligence agencies were responsible, and I'm also referring to the point that my friend in London was saying, that it is the detention that the government of Pakistan was putting in. If you look at the procedural code that works in Pakistan, that's quite similar to Indian code of procedure, because we have taken that legacy from the Indian from the British rule. So we have quite a similar things. They must understand that there must be a limit of the government to put somebody under detention, under custody on some security reasons. Okay. We can understand the enormity. But the point here is that the enormity is there, the problem is there. But if that person has not been proven guilty, how can you put him under detention for indefinite period of time, just to pacify some of the fears, some of the unwanted fears that we have? And another point that I want to bring in about the Islamabad Yatra.
Right. I know you have a lot of points to make, but I do want to take a closer look at the impact this case will have, or is likely to have, on the relationship between India and Pakistan. Lakhvi's release is just the latest in a string of disputes between the two countries in the past year. Let's take a look at their turbulent relationship. Hopes were high, of course, last May when the newly elected Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, invited Pakistan's Nawaz Sharif to his swearing-in ceremony. That was the first time a Pakistani Prime Minister was ever invited to that event in India. But the fragile relationship was frayed once again when talks between their foreign secretaries were cancelled in August. Since then, fighting has escalated significantly in the contested region of Kashmir. And now, in response to Lakhvi's release, Prime Minister Modi has indirectly accused Pakistan of sheltering terrorists. Adnan in London. So the relationship improved slightly when Modi came to power in India, but there is still a lot of mistrust between these two nations, it has to be said. Do you think the release release on bail of Lakhvi will slow down the efforts to improve the relationship, or is it going to be pretty much the same thing?
Well, I think that part of the issue is that Modi has had up until now, a fairly centralized national security and foreign policy establishment. And so a lot of the connections that were built up over a long period of time between lower level officials in the foreign ministries of the two countries has been sort of sidelined in some senses by sort of Modi's sort of centralization of control in the Prime Minister's office. One of the things that's also worth noting is that Pakistan itself has domestic political dynamics that make this somewhat more complicated. I mentioned before the agitations of Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and Tahrir al-Islam Qadri's Pakistan Awami Tehreek, the big protests that happened in Islamabad last autumn. A lot of people in sort of the commentariat believe that was in some senses an indirect sort of pressure on the civilian government by the military to not move too fast in terms of establishing talks with India. So we're still really trying to establish a new relationship between a Modi BJP-led India and this new Nawaz Sharif government that's only been in office for a couple of years.
Well,
okay, Mr. Bhaskar in New Delhi, what do you think this is going to have as far as an impact on the relationship between India and Pakistan? Will this put things on hold, in your view?
Well, I think this is going to be a setback as far as what I would call as the positive tenor that we saw in recent weeks when the Foreign Secretary of India, Dr. Jaishankar, had visited Islamabad as part of the SAARC Yatra. And we've had some encouraging signs. More recently, as far as the evacuation from Yemen was concerned, both India and Pakistan and their naval platforms were able to provide assistance to each other's nationals. And this was very well received in India. So I think there are some areas which really I think are the equivalent of the silver lining. But when it comes to 2611, I repeat this point, there is a very strongly held view in India that the Pakistani courts are unlikely to deal with this in a normative way, mainly because of what I call as the politico-military shadow, which envelopes almost all cases of terrorism when they come to the judicial process.
Let's bring in Zubair in Islamabad.
And perhaps on this last question, if I may add, let Al Jazeera solicit the views of viewers in Pakistan who all see this channel as to how independent is the judiciary in Pakistan. You might get some interesting responses.
All right, Zubair in Islamabad, do you as Mr. Bhaskar in New Delhi see this being a setback for the relationship between India and Pakistan?
No, it is not a setback once this new government came in and once the invitation to take part in the oath-taking ceremony. The Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif wasted no time, and even before that, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif was extending the olive branch to the Indian counterparts, and he was saying that we are all ready to continue with the composite dialogue that have been held back on one pretext or the other. And he was there. And he was not the only one to be invited, and there were other dignitaries and the heads of states were there. But then the composite dialogue were put on hold just on one reason, that why the Hurriyat leaders were visiting or invited by the Pakistani High Commission in India. That had been an age-old practice. Come on, if you had some doubts, you could have conveyed that. And if for that reason, this still is going on this 23rd March, the Pakistan Day activity that held in Delhi, there were your representation, your minister was there. And that minister was there in the presence of the Hurriyat leader. So that was just an excuse to hold talks. And there's another one thing that I want to just quote here about the visit of the Indian foreign minister. That was the SAARC Yatra. Many are saying that, although I do not agree with that, that this is a bilateral matter. So it should be taken as a bilateral matter. Why are you putting or camouflaging in the SAARC Yatra? Why not Pakistan-India talk that have been put in abeyance for such a long time?
Zubair, thank you so much. We've run out of time for today's show. Thank you so much for an interesting discussion. We thanking, of course, C. Uday Bashkar in New Delhi, Zubair Iqbal in Islamabad, and Adnan Nasimullah in London. And thank you as well for joining us for another edition of Inside Story. You can get in touch with us as always. You can go straight to our program page at aljazeera.com. Post your comments at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or you can also tweet us at AJ Inside Story. From me, Fully Batibo, and the whole team, bye for now.